Bienvenue à Montréal, Jenny.
Merci.
It is so great to have you here in Montreal. Your energy is incredible, and I hope we'll be able to share some of your story with the crowd here. So maybe to begin, tell us a little bit about Franklin Templeton and your family's history with it. Like, why is your last name not Franklin or Templeton?
So I'm third generation running Franklin Templeton. It was started by my grandfather 76 years ago now. We're a public company, but the family still has a large interest in the company. And the reason it's not Johnson family is because my grandfather actually had a brokerage business, and he decided to start up an asset management company, and he was a fan of Benjamin Franklin, so he started the Franklin Funds. And when my father got out of the military, his older brother took over the brokerage business, and he wanted to do his own thing, so he went to his father and he said, can I run the little asset management company? It was $2.5 million in assets and $10,000 in revenue. So technically, I'd say my father is the one who really grew the business. And today we have, we're 1.4 trillion in assets under management. We have clients in 160 countries, offices in 35 countries. We acquired Templeton in 1992. John Templeton launched the Templeton Growth Fund in Montreal, Canada in 1954.
Wow, so lots of history. Tell us a little bit more about these acquisitions. I mean, our families have just done kind of a partnership most recently, but you've been extremely active in the last, since you've basically taken over as CEO. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, so we've done actually the announcement with the acquisition of Putnam with Power Corp and Great West Life is our 10th acquisition in 3 years, and it basically is a pretty simple strategy for us. It's been about ensuring that we have the investment capabilities that our clients need. And we identified that, private assets aren't going away. We think for a variety of reasons they're here to stay. And we really we're concentrated in the traditional asset space. So we filled in some of the private assets. We also wanted to be more of a partner and do more on the distribution side. So invested in some fintech and other things that helped us to really be a better partner with clients. And then we've always liked local asset management. People tend to allocate 80% of their investments in their local market. And so we've kind of globally picked markets where we have small local teams.
Fascinating. So a nice decentralized model where the teams have their independence, but they can benefit from the center.
Yeah, our view has always been, if you're acquiring the asset management business, you are acquiring people in their investment process. There's no faster way to destroy value than to go in and change that. So I think, and actually several of the acquisitions approached us because we've gotten a very good reputation of being an acquirer, because we leave the investment process completely independent. We integrate, things like the back office, some of the client service, some of the distribution. But then we also do things like have a big believer as active managers that AI and data is going to be really important in the future. Data is really expensive. And so we have like a centralized investment data lake that any of our teams can access. So we try to do some things at the center that are additive to the investment teams.
That's super interesting. And we'll go back and touch on AI a little bit more later. You touched earlier on a comment on private assets are becoming a larger and larger share of the industry. Why is that?
It's interesting. I think a lot of folks think that private equity was just fueled by this kind of zero interest rate environment. But it's actually, we think, a real secular change. Even with rates up, companies and CEOs are choosing to stay private longer because there's such a pressure on quarterly earnings, and particularly times of great technological advances. The things that we're doing in, say, blockchain are probably not going to be material for 5 to 8 to 10 years, but we better be doing it today. Yeah. So that pressure when you're a public company is such that I think sometimes people don't make those longer term investments. So one, you see in 2000, the average company in the US went public after 3 years. By 2019, average company in the US went public 9 to 10 years. By 2022, it was 14 to 15 years. Yeah. So they're staying longer. And then on private credit, massive. We have $82 billion in private credit. Basel III in Europe, Dodd-Frank in the US, where they changed the capital requirements for banks, are just making it such that banks don't want to use their capital except to lend to their best customers. And so it's opened up this massive kind of middle market opportunity. And if anything, that's continuing to get worse. You look in the US with the regional banking crisis, they're talking about tighter capital requirements. And so that's just pushing lending out into the private markets.
Yeah, and that's a systemically good thing because it's better for private funds to have these loans than a bank that's 10 times leveraged.
I mean, it depends how you look at it. I mean, the one challenge in that is that it is less regulated from the standpoint of, the banking regulators are looking at all the regulated entities. What they're not focused on is the private areas. I think it allows entrepreneurship. There's actually been proof that kind of covenant light private credit has actually outperformed because it gives, sometimes with banks, the rules have to be so specific. Yeah. That even if you wanted to help a workout, you don't always have the choice to be flexible. Whereas in the private markets, they believe that it's just a matter of liquidity and can be worked out. They have the ability to stay longer. And so there's actually been outperformance in that. That's
fascinating. So your firm has this incredible history. You've bolted on all these acquisitions. How have you kept your culture intact? And what defines the Franklin Templeton culture?
So I always say that investment bankers will tell you it's a great strategic fit. It's a reasonable price, but they'll never talk about culture. And we think that deals actually succeed or fail on whether the cultural fits. There's a cultural fit. So we spend a lot of time as we're doing an acquisition with a team. Even on, with the folks at Great West and Power Corp, just on this latest deal. I mean, we got to know each other really, really well because we really viewed it as, a long-term partnership. So we focus on that, and we acquired a company called Legg Mason. Legg Mason had 8 independent investment teams underneath it. Western Asset Management, ClearBridge, Martin Currie, you may know those names, Clarion Partners. We acquired 7 of them, and we decided that one of them wasn't a great fit. Been a great friend of the firm, but wouldn't have made sense in our shop. And so we arranged for a buyout for the management team to buy itself out. So you have to make that decision ideally then. And then when I think I would say it's the 3 C's of culture. My father always said, take care of the client and the business takes care of itself. So do you have people who are truly focused on doing what's right for the client? Yeah. Which means sometimes taking a step back to make 2 steps forward. Collaboration. Do they work with other folks in the firm? And then finally, continuous improvement. This mindset of constantly trying to think about ways to innovate and to improve, in order to stay competitive in what is a very competitive, industry.
And so on this continuous improvement side, you mentioned earlier AI, blockchain. Can you talk to us about some of the technologies that are really impacting your business? And crypto obviously is all over the news recently. What are your thoughts on that space?
I could spend a whole session on crypto. So let me first start with AI. I think we're at an amazing inflection point with ChatGPT. It did the same thing that the internet browser did, which is, the internet browser was around for decades before any of us understood how to make it work for us. And suddenly we had access and you started to go, oh, this is kind of interesting. Wow, I should pay attention to this. And then all the innovation happens and new businesses come out. I think ChatGPT kind of woke us all up to, it's here, better focus on it, and now let me start thinking, and that's where we're going to see this next phase of innovation. And I just think, and I'll give an example, because I think it certainly resonated with me, why I think it's so important in asset management. So I used to do consumer lending, and I used to do car loans. And there were 6 pieces of data that we focused on when we made a decision about to give you a car. Payment to income, debt to income, down payment, how long you worked there, how long you lived at your home, and something else. We have a team that buys loans, and there's massive amount of data by these peer-to-peer lending programs. So they buy loans and they apply kind of machine learning against it. And they found things like, if you don't capitalize the name of your employer and 3 other micro signals exist, you're 25% more likely to charge off.
Wow.
Now, you would never think of that.
Capitalize the whole name?
Nope, just the
Or
first
just the first letter?
First letter.
Who doesn't capitalize the name of their own?
Well, that's how I feel. And I'm like, wow, my credit risk. But, as an old lender, like, you would never think of that, right? I mean, that's the beauty of this stuff, is it starts to figure out patterns that we don't see. And so I think that, as you're making investment decisions, it's going to be important. And I think it's not just the algorithms, it's actually the raw sources of data that you get where you're going to apply to make insights. We're longer term investors, so you're really looking for longer term trends. But we had our equity team in India, somebody wanted to predict motorcycle sales in India. He covered that sector. And he found by, a lot of trial and error, but with a lot of social media data points, he's actually built a model that's very predictive of motorcycle sales. So I think that's important. And I think data is really expensive, which is why it's going to be harder for more boutique managers to compete at the same level, just because I think the depth and breadth of your investment data is going to be important. And then on blockchain, so Franklin Templeton has, we have an approved, SEC-approved money market fund that's an on-chain money market fund. We built a shareholder servicing system on-chain. We also were a node validator on 5 platforms. We have a venture fund. We do active management advice on different strategies. So we believe in this space. A lot of noise. I mean, if you just look at FTX, it's so many things that would be wrong that if you actually dug into it, like it was a private network. There's a lot of reasons why public networks are going to be the future. But the way I would describe it to think about it is blockchain technology allows you to do 3 things. It's a payment mechanism, it's a smart contract, and it's a source of truth with its general ledger. So, all the exchanges are closed because everybody just have to go and settle it and figure it out where the money goes. Well, it's done immediately when it's on chain. It's going to open up interesting investment opportunities in the future that we haven't really thought about. And my favorite example is the singer Rihanna. Right before she did the Super Bowl, she released 300 NFTs. She was just testing the market, each one $210, each one worth 0.0033% royalty on her biggest hit song. And the reason she could do that is because if you bought the token and it's on the music plays, her song plays on a streaming service, the smart contract executes and says, oh, Jenny has the right to this royalty. And the payment mechanism, which today, admittedly, because it's crypto, but ultimately that's going to get closer and closer to dollars, right? It will come in and credit, because of course Spotify or the other services are getting paid in dollars. We'll have a mechanism to pay for that royalty, for those fractions of a cent. So you can imagine like athletes, and you're already starting to see this, where they'll sign a big contract and they'll sell off a 10% of their future earnings. And guess what? The fans pay a premium. Who doesn't want to say, oh, I own a piece of such and such, my favorite, athlete's future earnings. So we think of it as like there'll be the financial component, which you'll calculate versus other financial returns, and then there'll be the cultural component. Yeah. And these are going to be uncorrelated assets. And it's simply that the technology takes out a lot of the frictional costs in a transaction. And if you do that, you can reduce the size of the transactions and create tremendous amount of efficiency.
Fascinating. Another big trend in our industry is ESG. What's Franklin Templeton's approach to everything ESG related?
Well, first, I feel like it's important to kind of level set a little bit on ESG. I actually think Europe's done a decent job with their, what they call Article 6, Article 8, and Article 9. You go to Europe, they all complain about it, but it's actually probably one of the best I think I've seen. And it's essentially saying, Article 6 is saying, like, I'll consider ESG factors. Article 8 is, I'll tilt towards some factors. And Article 9 is, I have a specific outcome and impact. And ESG started out as, I must consider environmental, social, and governance risks to the underlying portfolio company. If I own a fossil fuel company, there could be sentiment risk, there could be regulatory risk, like there's risks to that. And so I must consider those things in my investment decision. The other side of that is I want to have specific impact with my money. The problem today is, one, the data is not good, right? A company like Franklin Templeton, we have a team of people who will calculate our carbon footprint. We'll pay consultants who create our community service report. We provide all this and as our D&I statistics. If you're a mid-cap or a small-cap company, it's really tough to be able to spend the money to do these things. And so the data is not great today. So that's number one. And then number two, people tend to blend, because there's different agendas, those two things, underlying risks to the portfolio, impact. I think where ESG evolves is where you will give both a risk-adjusted return, and it will include those risks, and you'll talk about those risks, and the ultimate impact, whether it's, net zero or gender equality or whatever, somebody's individual goals are in their portfolio. So what we do is we have a central group who provides guidance and research. If there's a proxy fight, they will facilitate conversations on it. They will bring in, even, facilitate the company coming in. But each of our investment teams will make the proxy decision on their own because it's part of their investment process. Yeah.
And do you think that ESG considerations will actually end up being integrated in all investment products? Or do you think, there will be a category of ESG funds and there'll be a category of everything else?
As an active manager, I don't know how you can't consider those three factors. Yeah. Right? In an active portfolio. Passive's a different deal, right? They can choose to do a quant lean, but as an active manager, I don't see how you could avoid it.
Fascinating. Few kind of quick questions to kind of finish off. What's your favorite business book or movie?
It's terrible. I don't actually read business books. I read
novel.
I'm right now. What am I doing? I'm reading Walter Isaacson's book on Kissinger.
Oh, so good. Yeah. He's 100, and he's still sharp as a whip.
I know, exactly. So so I tend to do. I love Walter Isaacson as an author, so I'll go there.
Yeah, he's pretty phenomenal. Yeah. They're nice and thick.
There, yeah.
If you weren't the CEO of Franklin Templeton, what would you be?
I'd be a cowgirl.
Cowgirl, yeah. One of the things I learned in the prep is that Jenny can actually ride horses without saddles, which is pretty impressive, given that I could barely ride a horse.
Jenny's had a couple accidents because she fell off without a saddle.
You've also experimented with VR. What's your latest great VR accomplishment?
Well, Paul, I am a Jedi Knight on Vader Immortal 3. I have gotten through all 47 levels. I'm very proud of this. I haven't won all of the wands or the gloves, but I'm getting close.
I love it. Final question. You've done so much since you've been CEO. The world's in total shift. What gets you excited for the next kind of 10 years in terms of your leadership?
Well, first of all, I just love the business that we're in. I had 5 kids, and at one point I was asking my daughters if, any of them are going to follow me in business, because everybody says, oh, women don't have mentors. So I'm like, you've had me. And my daughter goes, oh, no, Mom, I want to do something that helps people. I was like, are you kidding me? This is a business that helps people. And the cool thing about it is this convergence on, honestly, the topics like ESG, but also data. We are going to be able to provide portfolios that are so unique to meet individuals' goals that it combines kind of the investment capabilities and technology to provide customization. And so I just think it's a really fun time to be in this business.
That's exciting. So if any of you guys are thinking about career changes, asset management's great, and Franklin Templeton is a great place to go work. Great leader. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming to Montreal.